With the next Carolina Hurricanes game not being until Thursday, the team decided to call in some reinforcements from the AHL.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the Everyday for making this your first listen today. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking about everything about your Carolina Hurricanes. I am your host, Zach Martin. I am the beat writer for the Carolina Hurricanes over at the Hockey Writers. I am also the co-host of the Sturscast, which is another Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes as your host. I am very excited to bring you a Wednesday edition of the show, which is going to go over some recent call-ups for some Black Aces for the Carolina Hurricanes, with some AHL teams already having their seasons over with. Also going to look into a little bit more of the stats from Monday night's win for the Carolina Hurricanes and that really big, epic comeback. And also going to dive into reading some analytics cards, because I know I had some people on Twitter asking, how do you read the stat cards? So we'll go into all that today on a Wednesday show of Locked On Hurricanes. But before we get into that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So, like I said, the first wouldn't be it's not the biggest news, but it's a little bit of something to talk about for the fact that the Carolina Hurricanes have recently called 3 players up to the team, just mainly as Black Aces, just for some extra bodies. Because, like along with Scott Morrow, Bradley Nadeau, and Jackson Blake, those guys are considered right now the Black Aces because, with them signing their contracts before the playoffs started, and, along with the healthy scratches of Tony DeAngelo and, Jasper Kotkaniemi at the time, before Jesper Foss got hurt. So they're not technically Black Aces, but they're still healthy scratches. And most of the guys that the Hurricanes do have are like the newer prospects would probably be considered Black Aces for the most part. But the Hurricanes on Tuesday afternoon did call up 3 guys up from the AHL. It's kind of like reinforcements just in case, something like what happened to Brett Pesce on Monday night happens, where a guy gets hurt or someone gets sick, or even though Jesper Foss hasn't really played or practiced since getting hurt against the Columbus Blue Jackets in the final game of the regular season. So the Hurricanes called up Dylan Coghlan, the defenseman from the Springfield Thunderbirds, and they also called up Max Comtois and Antti Raanta from the Chicago Wolves, with all their seasons pretty much being over down in the American Hockey League, with the playoffs starting very, very soon down in the A. So Dylan Coghlan this year for the Springfield Thunderbirds in 61 games had 41 points, 16 goals, and 25 assists, which he finished tied for first in goals on the Thunderbirds and tied for 11th in points among all AHL blue liners. And the cool thing, too, is for him, he was actually selected for the Atlantic Division, the 2024 AHL All-Star Classic. So it's really good to see Dylan Coghlan back. Everyone kind of thought, with the trade of Max Pacioretty the season before, he was part of that trade that brought Max Pacioretty and himself over to the Carolina Hurricanes for everyone's favorite for future considerations. And going through training camp, going through the preseason, and it seemed like Dylan Coghlan was probably going to be one of those mainstays on the blue line. And unfortunately, just with how Jalen Chatfield played, Ethan Bear against some time, at the time, also getting the addition of, Brent Burns and all that, he just kind of fell out of the shuffle and was mainly healthy scratch for most of the season, got some starts here and there for the most part. But, it was good to see him thrive in Springfield. Like I said, led the team in goals, tied for first in goals with 16, 11th in the entire AHL in terms of points among all blue liners with his 41. So a good overall season for him in Springfield. I actually did get to see him in Charlotte against the Charlotte Checkers, because I also write for the Charlotte Checkers over at the Calder Times. and seeing him and even Ryan Suzuki in person too. It was fun seeing those guys, Carolina Hurricanes prospects. They are at the time with the St. Louis Blues affiliate in the American Hockey League, but it was good to see some Hurricanes players, prospects in some aspect, which way or the other. But he looked really good in the game. He actually made an impact. I think he had, from what I remember in that game, he had a goal and 2 assists. Same thing like Ryan Suzuki. So those guys played really, really well. It was fun to see them play in person. But like I said, a great season for Dylan Coghlan in the AHL, all things considered. And with the injury to Brett Pesce, which we're still not 100% on what that is, most likely I would not suspect seeing him in Game 3 on Long Island on Thursday night. So it'll be very interesting to see what the Hurricanes do. Yes, they do have Tony DeAngelo that's waiting in the wings. He probably might get the start unless they want to go with Scott Morrow, or they might go to Dylan Coghlan just because of the season he had down in Springfield, because he actually had more playing time than Tony DeAngelo. So I wouldn't really be surprised if, that's the case where you might see Dylan Coghlan come in. Who really knows? But it's just an extra defensive body for the Hurricanes. Outside of said, like DeAngelo, Scott Morrow, now you have another third defenseman as well in case something like this happens with Brett Pesce. So it's good to see Dylan Coghlan back. The other player that they did bring up was Max Comtois, that they actually gave an NHL contract to earlier this season. He was basically just playing for the Chicago Wolves, all things considered, former Anaheim Duck. So, I mean, all in all, he's had a decent NHL season this year with Chicago Wolves. In 65 games, he got 44 points, 19 goals, and 25 assists, which is pretty good for, a player of his stature. You would thought with him coming into the league and getting drafted where he did, it was just, you thought he would do a little bit more. The fact that, he was able to, be part of Team Canada for a couple World Juniors, also some World Championships. And he did win gold in 2018 and 2021 for the World Juniors and also the World Championships as well. A former 50th overall pick by the Ducks back in 2017. And like I said, the Hurricanes did sign him on March 4th as a free agent. More than anything, he's just, like I said, just an extra forward body in case, something like what happened to Jesper Fast. He's still out. Really behind him, there's not a lot of other forwards you can really turn to because, Jesper Kotkaniemi draws back in. He had a phenomenal game, too, against the Islanders. Threw a massive hit on Cal Clutterbuck. A lot of great chances and opportunities. He's playing right now where he's going to come out of the lineup, and that's going to make things very interesting when Jesper Fast comes back. And then you have also Brendan Lemieux, who's a healthy scratch and stuff like that, too. And, of course, you also got, Jackson Blake and Bradley Nadeau. So it'll be very interesting to see what the Hurricanes do with Max Comtois. Most likely he's going to be a black ace more than anything else, but it's still, like I said, it's always good to have extra bias just in case something happens. So that's basically just what it was for him. And then, of course, Father Finn is back, Antti Raanta, which is good for him. So it's good to see him back. With the Chicago Wolves this year, he had a 2-2-4 record, a 3.54 goals against average, and a .873 save percentage in 8 appearances for the Wolves this year. Overall, in terms of his AHL career, he has 34 career AHL games with the Chicago Wolves, the Tucson Runners, and the Rockford IceHogs, with his career record being 18-8-5 with a 2.79 goals against and a .906 save percentage. Overall, in terms of this season, it really wasn't the greatest for Antti Raanta. He did okay, but then struggled a lot and then just kind of fell out of the shuffle with, Frederick Anderson being out for over 40 games with the blood clotting issue, Raanta, struggling, Pierre Kachekov kind of like cementing himself as one of like the 2 guys that the Hurricanes are going to turn to for a lot of the season. And then the Hurricanes goes and gets, Spencer Martin as a claim pickup from the Columbus Blue Jackets. You kind of saw those 3 going together for a little while, and then you see Frederick Anderson come back, and Antti Raanta's the odd man out, and he went to Chicago. And of course, that's like he's been down to Chicago twice this year, and credit to him for being able to accepting the reassignment, going down there trying to figure out his game and stuff like that. And you're hoping the best for him, on a 1-year deal with the Hurricanes to come back after winning the Jennings the year before. But most likely anything else, he's probably like I said, he's going to be a black ace for the playoffs more than likely, because the fact that Spencer Martin played pretty well in the 5 or 6 games they saw for the Hurricanes. Of course, Peter Kochekov's had a great season. Of course, Frederick Anderson is on an otherworldly pace right now for the Hurricanes since coming back from his injury, and that well, not really his injury, but just the blood clotting issue that he had. And despite the 3 goals in game 2, he pretty much locked it in for the Hurricanes in the first 2 games for the most part. So I mean, it's 4 goals in 2 games. You can't really ask much more out of that from your 1A goaltender. But in terms of Antti Raanta, unless something happens to the goalies, knock on wood, that doesn't happen, I don't really see him coming into the playoffs at all very much, unless someone gets hurt, like I said, knock on wood, or someone's really struggling and they were like, all right, we got to go to the Antti Raanta, because he has proven, 2 seasons ago when Frederick Anderson was out with his injury after getting hurt against the Avalanche, he basically played really well for the Hurricanes in the first couple of rounds in the playoffs back in 2022. But like I said, all in all, I would not see Antti Raanta very much back for the Hurricanes in terms of the net. And like I said, unless something really does happen. But it's good to see those guys back. You guys said Dylan Coghlan's back up. Max Comtois played 1 game for the Hurricanes this year, but he is also back. And of course, it's always good to see Father Finn back with all the other Finns as well. So that's really cool to see. So we're going to talk about, doing some little more stats diving into the game 2. That the Hurricanes did that massive comeback on Monday night 5-3 against the New York Islanders. But we'll get to that here in a second on a Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED lights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And when eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all in an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So I know on the Tuesday episode, we kind of deep dive into some stats that kind of happened, with the Hurricanes snapping the New York Islanders 81 straight game, 81-0 record of being, winning a game up by 3-0 in a single game. They broke that and a bunch of other things as well. But I thought, we could go a little bit more into stats diving as well. Just some I find really interesting, and the fact there's some kind of cool and fun. Just the fact that, you're kind of looking more into the game that was absolutely electric, just from the reactions from everyone on Monday night and even all through Tuesday. Like, people were still celebrating that win. They're still trying to figure out what to call that comeback, because you have Shock at the Rock and all that stuff. And now you're kind of like, all right, what do you name this one? Because of the fact that it's such a huge comeback for the Hurricanes. So, everyone's still buzzing from it and stuff like that. So it's really cool to see that, just how that game was. It just bleeds into how much everyone loves this team, and the fact that even the next day people are still talking about, because it's an instant classic, already a top 10 game in Hurricanes history, just because of how that was. It's just somehow it's always early round games for the Hurricanes where they make special moments. Honestly, in general, I think just playoff games as a whole, the Hurricanes always make some huge, huge moments that fans will always remember. But one of these stats I really wanted to get into real quick, the fact that you look at the Hurricanes in terms of when Seth Jarvis scores a goal in the playoffs, they are 5-1-1 when he does that. That is just really cool to see for the fact that you saw how it was, in the regular season, it was like 46 or 47 wins. And that's just when the fact that Seth Jarvis scores, it's almost guaranteed that the Hurricanes are going to win the game. And you look at the playoff games, in 7 games where he scored a goal, they've won 5 of those games. So it's almost like it's guaranteed that the Hurricanes might win a game when Seth Jarvis scores a goal. And big shout out to the Canes Stat Brand. They're the ones who do a lot of these really cool, like niche or old school stats about the Hurricanes that you would never really can think of, or something that's like, okay, that's really interesting. So I would say if you're looking for a really good Canes account to follow in terms of just overall records of if some guy scores or if this crazy thing happens in a game or just in general, Canes Stat Brand is that place to go. So really awesome by them to do that. But yeah, like I said, Seth Jarvis is 5-1-1 in playoff games. When the Hurricanes, when Seth Jarvis scores, that's the Hurricanes record in terms of that. Another one that we really got to dive into, which is, for me, it's insane to think about when you really look at it just by the numbers and the fact of just the sheer onslaught of shots the Hurricanes put on the Islanders on Monday night that were, just in terms of attempts, because I know in terms of the shots on goal was 39-12, which I'm still shocked for the fact that the Islanders only had 1 shot in the third period, and the fact that they only had 1 shot in the last 34, 35 minutes of the game. But the Hurricanes out-attempted the Islanders by 61 shots on Monday night. The Hurricanes had 83 attempted shots compared to the Islanders' 22, and this was all in the 5-on-5 play. Not just overall. I think that from what I saw, the Hurricanes out-attempted the Islanders in just overall shot attempts, 110. The Hurricanes put 110 attempts on the Islanders Monday night. In just terms of 5-on-5 play, they had 83 compared to the Islanders' 22. And that is the largest difference in any non-overtime game since the NHL started tracking the attempted shots since 2009-2010. The previous playoff record was 50 shot differential, which was 73-23 by the Chicago Blackhawks back in 2012 against the now former Arizona Coyotes. The fact that the Hurricanes outbeat that by 11 shot attempts, and that's just on 5-on-5 play. It's insane to think about when you really look at it for the Hurricanes, and the fact that they can go out there and in a playoff game, you're down 3-0. You storm back and win 5-3 in the way you do it. With Sebastian Aho and Jordan Martinook making the quickest 2 goals in the playoffs for the Hurricanes in 9 seconds in between, they going from down 3-2 to up 4-3. And the fact that with all of that going on, the Hurricanes had 83 shot attempts just on 5-on-5 play. And like I said, they had 110 for the entire game. It's mind-blowing at how you look into that, where it's we all know the Hurricanes. Anyone who's watched Hurricanes hockey knows that they put on a lot of shots. Yes, most of the time we'll get blocked. I know on Monday night the Islanders had 28 blocked shots at one point, which is crazy to think, to the fact that they had that many blocks. They had that many blocks, but then you look at the Hurricanes shots on goal, and it's in the 30s. And when you look at just the attempts, even the attempts are wild when you're up to 83 and then 110 through the entire game. And the fact that they also held the Islanders. The Islanders had 22 shot attempts on 5-on-5 play, 22, and they only had 12 on goal the entire game. That just tells you how locked in that defense was, for the fact that they didn't really let them shoot a whole lot. And for the fact that you saw the Hurricanes' own offensive zone possession time was 20 minutes compared to the Islanders' 8. when you put it in the context of like this, the ozone possession time, and you look at the shot attempts, you can see why the Hurricanes were just peppering Semyon Varlamov all game too, despite the fact that they capitalized on 3 goals early. But the Hurricanes just didn't give up, and that's what you kind of see with how that worked out, to where they were able just to put all that effort onto the Islanders and kept putting pressure on them, and that's why you saw the game end the way it did. So I don't know, I thought it was very interesting to look into like stats like that, where you look at how the team, what the team record is when a certain guy scores, and it seems like it's Seth Jarvis is just almost guaranteed at this point that most likely they're going to win games. And then you look at just the new record of, shot attempts compared to, when you look at shots on goal and everything else. So it's really, really interesting to see in terms of how that works out with, diving into just outside of just goals and assists and points. So you're looking at like other deep dive analytics type stuff and deep dive stats and all that stuff as well. So that we're up with that part of the segment. Just like I said, just looking at some stats as well. But we're going to get into talking about not just did talk about stats, but we're also going to dive a little bit deeper into some hockey stat cards and how to look into those as well. Because I know some people were asking about that, like how do you read it? I know on Reddit and some other places too, people are wondering how do you read individual game cards, certain player ratings and stuff like that. How's it all get weighted out and all the good stuff in terms of hockey stat cards? Because there's a really good account online and even on Twitter that shows you those graphics, and we're talking like not just certain players but certain teams, and it's every game that you kind of see these stat cards. So we'll get into all of that in a third segment right here on a Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Regardless of where we are in the current standings, I want to remind you that you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick rather studs like Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, not so much now, but just in general, or Nathan McKinnon, or even guys like Sebastian Aho will record more or less than their Sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game. To win a 100-time bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Hurricanes fans. You can win 100 times your money by playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONAHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONAHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details in local availability. When you're drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish you could handpick the best stars for your business team? If you're building your talent roster, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like matching, assessments, and virtual interviews. Hate waiting? Indeed US data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. And the one thing I really like about it for the fact that Indeed does the hard hiring work for you. Sponsor a job and we'll match you with quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed fit your job description right when you post. With Indeed, you can start hiring fast. Join over 3 million businesses worldwide using Indeed to hire great talent fast. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon. Once again, that's Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So we're going to wrap up the show with this segment of something that I found that I've been using a lot this season myself, actually, in terms of looking at how you evaluate the players on the Carolina Hurricanes as a whole, individually as well. And I know, like I said, some people on social media were asking, like, how would you read it? And I even know people on Reddit were asking about it. Just overall, just you can see like the hockey, like a lot of analytics cards have been flying around, with Jay Fresh and a few others over the last couple of years. Certain people use certain different analytics and all that type of stuff. And the one that I've been really enjoying, like I said, people have been asking about, is hockey stat cards, which if you go to hockeystatcards.com, they actually have, just the individual teams, and you look at the players on different stats and stuff like that. But you also can look at how their impact was for a game. So when you're looking at like individual game stuff, in terms of the game scores. So in terms of how game scores are looked at, game scores is something where it's a player evaluation metric, and the objective is to measure single game player productivity, which the concept of the game score is basically been used in other sports as well. But with game score, it weighs each of the actions of each player on a team to give basically a single number representing their overall performance in that game. And you're talking stuff like goals, assists, shots on goal, penalties drawn or taken, faceoffs won or lost, blocked shots. You can even look at like 5-on-5 goal differentials, 5-on-5 Corsi differentials. And if you're talking about Corsi, you're talking about like, which is a lot of like possession stats, like Corsi for with Corsi against, where if you look at something like Jesperi Kotkaniemi, he had a lot of, he was at 60% of Corsi throughout most of the season, which means that basically 60% of the time when he's on the ice, the Carolina Hurricanes had possession. So that's kind of one of the things they look into that as well. Like I said, with the 5-on-5 goal differentials, but with the 5v5 Corsi differential as well, and the fact that each action is weighed differently in that formula. But the fact that if you look at like one goal that's scored, it's probably worth more than one block shot. And the good thing about the stat card is if you really look at hockeystatcards.com, you can see that all the different, they all overlay on top of each other, but you can see there's the color code differential where you look at, offense might be a dark blue, and then it's like the individual's offense, or if you look at the on-ice offense, could be like a lighter blue. Defense is like purple, for individual defense, or, defense above average could be like a lighter purple and stuff like that. So it's nice where you can kind of see a difference, and you have a scale at the bottom where it's like 0 is neutral, and then, if you go to the left, it's more negative, and then if you go to the right, it's more positive. So you're going from like 0.5 to 0 to 1 to 1.5. So it breaks it down into individual 0.5s as you go farther on either side of the spectrum, which is something that's really cool for the fact that, it's not the end all be all, but it's something that it's good to think the fact that you can kind of like see what's actually happening on the ice. And it's a good thing to like, it gives you real stats on a weighted system instead of like looking at predictive analysis that you can see with other, this guy could do this guy could do that, or it's like this is where his market value could be. But with these hockey stat cards and the way it's weighted, you can actually see real time on ice production, and you can see how, okay, this actually does match what I'm seeing. Like this guy did really good on offense tonight. You can see that, or this guy played really bad on defense tonight. You will see that, and that's just taking all considerations of just overall. And then you're talking about like with other guys as well, and just in different situations, like I said, with goals, assists, 5-on-5 differentials, Corsi differentials, power plays, faceoffs, all that stuff. And if you want to look at the the recent stat card for the Carolina Hurricanes on their win on Monday night 5-3, if you just want to look at like Jordan Martinook and Seth Jarvis and Jordan Staal, and even like Brent Burns, all those guys had bars way to the right, almost into the 4. Like they were above 3.5 and below 4. But basically, any farther right you get, you're having a really excellent game. And the fact that Jordan Martinook had a very small, slim defense, like very, very, like a 0.0, like 0.0001 in terms of his individual defense. But if you look at his on-ice defense, that was over a 1. You look at his on-ice offense, which is above, with his average, that was all the way to a 2.5. And then just his individual offense was almost to a 4. And that's because of the fact that the huge goal he scored, which was the, which was the fourth goal, the game winner essentially. Seth Jarvis had a perfect bar almost all the way up to the 4. Like, he had no drop off at all. Defense, phenomenal. Offense, off the charts. He's the one that got the second goal for the Hurricanes. Jordan Staal, he didn't score, but he played like what he usually does, lockdown center, and was able to make chances happen. And you saw with how his bar was. Same thing for Brent Burns. Played really well. Jacob Slavin does what he does best, play excellent defense. Dmitry Orlov, him and Jalen Chatfield have probably been one of the best analytical guys all season as a defensive pair. And if you just at the bottom, like you kind of look at Brett Pesce. Brett Pesce was in between a negative 0.5 and 1, but he got hurt. So there's really not much you can take from that. But then, Evgeny Kuznetsov, the offense wasn't really there, but in terms of, just on the on-ice offense, with his offense above average, it was okay. It wasn't the greatest. It was almost a -1, but in terms of just individual offense as a whole, it was over 0. So it's very, very interesting of how you kind of look into stuff like that. So I hope that helps for people who kind of were like still trying to figure out how to read those stat cards. There's really great places you can kind of read and figure out how to look into those things. Like I said, I've looked at like Jay Fresh and some other people, and it's kind of all right. You kind of understand what they're talking about. But I think with hockey stat cards, I think it's kind of like a good beginner's course to look into analytics. I wasn't very much into the analytics guy myself, but reading more into that as the season progressed, I would say I'm in the middle. Like I'm like, I get it, but I'm not totally understanding it. But overall, I have a general knowledge of what they're talking about in terms of the stat cards. Of course, the offseason did do a lot more deep diving into stuff like that. But if you're trying to learn analytics and looking at it in a different perspective and seeing like, okay, what am I seeing on the ice and what's the analytics saying compared to that, I think hockey stat cards is probably the best place for something like that. So I hope that helped. But that will wrap up the Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Thank you to the Everydayer for making this your first listen of the day, as always. I really do appreciate it. Everyone, the Tuesday episode absolutely was the best. I would say probably the best numbers overall in terms of the podcast, YouTube. Big thank you to everyone who's also subscribed to. A lot of new subscribers in YouTube, so thank you very much for that as well. Over 400 views on Tuesday's episode. Almost 300 downloads of the podcast version for Tuesday's show. So big, like I said, big thank you, the Everydayer, and just Hurricanes fans in general for, making that episode so much fun. I'm glad everyone enjoyed it and stuff like that. But if you want to become more of an Everydayer and you're on the YouTube side of things, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Make sure to also click the bell notification so you don't miss an episode. Make sure to hit the like button so that way you know that you enjoyed the show, and that helps us as well. Share with everyone else you know, because we are on the road to 1,000 subscribers. So make sure you get that word out there that we're trying to get there. And then if we do, we might do something cool for you guys. So like I said, subscribe. Hit the bell notification, like the video as well, and share with everyone that you know that is a Hurricanes fan or isn't one, and they're trying to get into hockey. And like I said, that'll help you also become an Everydayer with comments in the comment section. If you're on the podcast side of things, make sure to leave a 5-star rating. That helps us get a boost on that on Apple and Spotify and all that stuff too, so we can kind of get more out there as well. And if you leave a 5-star rating plus a review, I might just read it on the podcast, so make sure to do that as well. If you want to stay connected with me, I'm at OneTrueZach on Twitter. If you want to follow the podcast, it's LO_Hurricanes. Make sure to check all that out. I do have a link tree in my bio that does have where you can find all my articles, with the Hockey Writers and the Calder Times, and also where you can watch or listen to the Surgecast, is the other podcast that I do. And there's also links to this podcast on all podcast platforms or YouTube as well. But I hope everyone has a great rest of their Wednesday. We're only one more sleep away from Game 3 on Long Island for the Hurricanes against the New York Islanders. But until then, as always, let's go Canes.